Australia, don't waste my time. So said the former England halfback and a legend of English rugby, Ben Youngs, and might one say, a famous victory, one of the most famous results that Australian rugby has seen in the best part of a decade, perhaps even more. The Wallabies 42-37 winners over England to kickstart their Grand Slam tour of the United Kingdom and Ireland. I'm Christy, Doran, joined by Tony Harper, and you're listening to the Roar Rugby Podcast. We're going to break down this extraordinary result overnight. And Harps, can you believe what you've just witnessed?
No, that was fantastic, wasn't it? And I mean, the idea of these instant reactions is that we dive in straight after the game. The analysis isn't as it would be after a couple of watching. It's all about raw, what we feel in the moment. And I'm the first to say that it's a couple of months ago that we lost by a massive record score to Argentina, and I think I was about as low as a person can go. Plenty of feedback. I'm here to say I'm back, baby, and yeah, baby, and every other baby thing you can come up with. That was just astonishing. It was awesome. I had the feeling, when Itoje went over, I was like, oh, we've seen this so many times, haven't we? Gallant, brave effort, all the rest of it. But to come up with that at the end, oh, I'm stoked, mate. I'm so stoked today.
It was an offload from the gods by Len Ikitau, who somehow, with his left mitt, puts Max Jorgensen away. And the 20-year-old, who, might I say, in 2015, went to the World Cup with his father. He saw Matt Giddo deliver one of the best swan dives you ever see against England during a day to forget for the Poms of the world. And he's just come up with an even better swan dive to score. And it's 9 years after he was there with his old man, who, of course, a famous Wallaby himself in Peter Jorgensen. But Max Jorgensen, the man of the moment, who overshadows the other man of the moment, being Joseph-Aukuso Suaalii. It's extraordinary that the Wallabies have come and they've gone to Twickenham, a place they haven't won at 9 years. They've won from 11 against England heading into this test match. They've been written off by everyone. And to be down 15 points to 3 midway through the first half, to end up winning a game, scoring 5 tries, it's an extraordinary result. What stood out to you? We've heard a little bit from Joe Schmidt, kind of went on a bit of a waffling tangent, much like myself now, but he wasn't quite able to feel, I don't think, how significant it was, this result, but it does a lot to breathe life back into rugby in Australia.
It does. It's incredible. England have lost 4 in a row now, and they've led into the final quarter of the match each time and blown it. So there's a bit in that as well. But after you mentioned the score there, after 19, 20 minutes, England really did come out of the blocks, didn't they? And Marcus Smith looked supreme. He was right on his game, his handling. He made a couple of fantastic little line breaks. His kicking was spot on. And meanwhile, Noah failed to find touch and wasn't quite there. And I know we were on our WhatsApp and going, this is heading a certain way. But the remarkable thing is how they came back into it. And the debutant, big money move from rugby league. I've called out Hamish McLennan. He's a bit of a villain in Australian rugby, but he'll be sitting back. I don't know, Christy, he might have been at the game in a corporate box with a champagne, or maybe on the couch with a Milo this morning, but he'd have a massive grin on his face watching what unfolded there as well.
And so he should, perhaps.
Yeah, so he should, and it's proven right. I saw something on the socials, one fan going, "Can we have 5 more leagueies, please?" And where would we be there? But he looked made for it. And a really interesting moment in his post-match conference on Stan, where he said that you talk about Jorgensen going to a game back in 2015. Suaalii was at a game in 2003 when he was a couple of months old, Samoa versus England. So he felt that kind of set him on the path to this. But it was just an extraordinary opening 40. I think he faded a little in the second half, or wasn't as impactful. But that first 40 minutes really, like, it was a new dawn in a way, wasn't it? The sun coming out from behind the clouds.
Yeah, certainly. And he kind of had spiders on him, didn't he? He was able to free his arm, offload, something that Australian rugby players haven't been able to do, stand in the tackle, free their arms. But he was doing it at will. And, of course, he laid on the first try for Tom Wright, magnificently drew the player in, and then over the top passes to Wright, who scores and has a free run into the try line. Look, Hamish McLennan has copped a lot of slack over the years. He's right about a couple of things that Aussie rugby, I think, does need some cream to put on top of this, like this underbelly of reasonable players. But in the last few years, Max Jorgensen, headhunted by league officials, wasn't able to get. He seals the deal today, doesn't he? But I thought, all in all, Suaalii was extremely impressive. There was one little blunder with a running line where he wasn't able to run onto the ball. And that's a teething issue in the midfield that occasionally will arise. But outside of that, he was first class. And good to highlight the 210s, because that was a great battle in itself. And you look at how England surged out of the blocks, and Australia just couldn't cope with the pace that England was delivering. But it just turned around the midway point of the first half. And then it was a little bit fortunate in the way that Tate McDermott comes on, but I thought his coming on for a bloody Jake Gordon, who's run down the tunnel with blood streaming down his face. That was one of the turning points of the game, wasn't it, Harps? Because McDermott comes on, 2 quick line breaks, and he puts the ball on the money for Harry Wilson to score, and the Wallabies are just about up.
Well, that was a fantastic little breakthrough, wasn't he? I kind of used Ben O'Keefe there, the referee, as a bit of a screen too, and he went in past him, but then that diving pass off the ground could go wrong. But yeah, perfect backing up by Wilson. He was really impactful as well. I thought everyone, maybe Taniela Tupou, gave away a scrum penalty, lost the ball forward a couple of times. Him aside, I was just really impressed. And we saw very, very good things from a lot of different players that we hadn't probably previously seen in the past, 5 or 6 games, 5 or 6 test matches. So, but I do agree that, Gordon's absence there, and he did come back on and play quite well when he was, bandaged up like a mummy. But McDermott did just bring that energy at that point. And it's kind of, you look to McDermott to come on in the second half and bring that. It's great to be able to inject that energy, take him off again, and bring him back again later to do that again. And he played a big role down the finish. But it was incredible after 19 minutes to be that far behind and things slipping out of control, to then go into the sheds on the back of a Noah penalty to a halftime lead.
Certainly, and look. The one benefit they had is they had time up their sleeves, didn't they? The surge from England occurred in the first 20 minutes. And here's a quote from Jamie George after the test match. We saw him laying down the law. It's an all too familiar script for England, having blown a last minute opportunity with George Ford last week against the All Blacks. But George said, I think the blueprint of how we wanted to play was in the first 20 minutes of the game. We put Australia under a lot of pressure, and sometimes in a test match like that, you think the job's done. We took our foot off the gas. You've got to give credit to Australia. They were very good tonight. We can't keep doing that. It's going to be a tough one to watch back, and it will be a very tough one to watch back. But it does speak to how tight international rugby is at the moment, that if you blink for a moment, you take your foot off the gas that Jamie George mentioned, and you can find yourself, that lead just evaporates before your very own eyes.
I mean, I think they thought they'd had that one at the finish there, and you saw I know you mentioned it, and I noticed that as well, where the camera panned to him. I think he was giggling on the bench at the tightness of the Marcus Smith conversion that put them 2 points clear just before Australia stormed home. But I do think that must be, and Steve Borthwick as well talked about how gutted everyone was. They really are in trouble at how they're finishing off games, and Australia just kept coming. I think there was a big moment in the 50th minute when Jeremy Williams went over that try where we were all looking at it going, has he touched the sideline here? Ben O'Keefe gave it as a try on the field and it possibly saved it. It looked, it was interesting, Morgan Turanui, you could tell who was the optimist and the pessimist on the stand call because he was not having that as a try at all. But it was such an important moment. I know the England fans will be blowing up about that, did he, in fact, did his toenail of his boot scrape that touchline? Huge moment in retrospect.
Yeah, massive moment. I thought as soon as it was sent up as a try, an on-field try, it was going to be very hard to overturn. And I think the evidence we saw, there was almost enough to overturn it. I think if that's sent up without Ben O'Keefe saying anything, I think it's probably no try. But the end of the day is that there was quite a few tries, wasn't there, either side of it. So you could break down so many little moments. I know that the Timo did his best to try to rob Chandler Cunningham South of a try early on. I can't believe that they agonised and stewed over that for a couple of minutes. That was a try every day of the week.
Every time you look at rugby and the delays, and that was one. I think we looked at it and we were like, that's 2 minutes to. It's so obvious. Like, just let's play on. Why are we doing this?
Indeed. And look, I agree with your earlier point. Taniela Tupou was probably the only one there that you've gone, he didn't have a great game. And he was poor. And sometimes that happened. You get beaten at the scrum, you get pinged for angling in, and then all of a sudden everything's going against you. But we've actually seen with Alan Alatoa's injection that he's coming back. He's starting to find his form because he was really slow out of the blocks this year. It's taken him 6 months to get to where he is. He was poor throughout Super Rugby, pretty poor to start with for the Wallabies as well. And this comes off the back of an Achilles injury last July 2023, which cruelled and devastated his World Cup campaign. So to be able to have a couple of tight heads who are genuinely world-class or have the potential to be that is a huge, huge boost for Aussie rugby and the Wallabies going into this spring tour. But apart from that, everyone stood up, Harps. And you're right, Noel Lolosio, clutch moments, responded really, really well. Tom Wright, I thought, was magnificent. He was my player of the match. Everything that he's doing at the moment, from his work under the high ball where he was flaky in the past to his heads up, he's finding and striking a great balance. And of course it's coming off, but of knowing when to kick and when to run. And his line breaks, we saw it against the All Blacks in Sydney. He's the guy who sparked their resurgence in the Bledisloe Cup, and he's done it again today against England at Twickenham.
It's a great call on Tom Wright. Lenny Katau's got to run him close as well. I know Joseph won the man of the match according to the broadcasters, but all around they just kept going as well, and I think that's something we haven't necessarily seen from this team. Harking back to that Argentina disaster as well, where they did come away saying they had one bad half, but there was such a shocking half. And in this one, the Andrew Callaway try, I just love that. I love the fact that he picked that ball up and there was not a moment of panic and there was not a moment of, his decision-making was spot on. The way he straightened up and then weaved away from the defenders. And at that point, I was like jumping out of my chair. I thought that was the moment, and to have it then turn around, very Wallaby thing from the kickoff. Tommy Freeman of England jumps up and wins that kickoff. And it's like, here we go again. And then like moments later, they're down there driving over. It's like those little moments there where you think, we just don't have that mongrel, that edge to close it out here. But how wrong. And great analysis on Stan post-match of the winning try. Like, I really love that from Morgan and Hoops, how they broke that try down, and how, we saw a week ago George Ford sitting in the pocket for a drop goal against the All Blacks, same time of the game, all or nothing kick, a poor pass to his right-hand shoulder, and he shanked his shot. And it was like, are the Wallabies going to do it on a kind of 50-50 drop goal chance here, and they just came out and surprised everyone, didn't they?
It's an interesting point because I think that for the second straight week, England shut up shop. They nudged ahead with that Marcus Smith conversion, and from that point in time, it was box kick after box kick after box kick. Now, I know that they were doing that throughout the test, and that's a hallmark of their play is contestables, but I just thought that that's a long time to try to run down the clock, and they weren't looking to be proactive again. They weren't looking necessarily to challenge nearly as much, and it bit them in the backside. The first time that they try to play something off the back of a set piece, first phase ball, it breaks down, and you do. Oh, actually, I was going to say you feel for them, but you don't. And it's a carbon copy from 2016 when Owen Farrell was the person that would streak away, that the ball was on the deck and he would tow it ahead, he'd pick it up, and England won 3-0 on Australian soil. The way that the Wallabies came back and that Andrew Kellaway try was carbon copied to what it was 9 years ago, which really broke Australia's and sucked all the life out of the game off the back of the World Cup final result. So into a springboard of the Lions next year in a home World Cup in 2027, these sort of moments the Wallabies they've caught and they've now got to run with it. And they've got Wales next week, and we're all dancing and talking about how fine a victory it is, but they've now very much got to quickly turn their attention to Wales in a week's time, which will be another important match and stepping stone on the road to recovery.
Matt Dawson, the 2003 World Cup winner, and just to firm up your point, his quote on radio after it was, "I can't lose sight of what an incredible try that was under pressure for Australia. But England had it. How many times have England had the game under the control and they go back to this dreaded box kick? It gets them in trouble every single time. For 65 minutes, England were fantastic. In the last 15 minutes, they were rubbish." And for all that, though, the Wallabies had to finish it off like that. Morgan described it as a bread and butter play, but to do it under those conditions at that game state was fantastic. I didn't see much bread and butter, though, about Ikitau's pass and how he drew Marcus Smith in and sent Jorgo over. There, I do direct everyone to the website, theroar.com.au, to just take a look at the fabulous Getty photo of that moment. There's a photo showing Ikitau face on with a flick, with the ball coming out of his left hand. It is an iconic image of an iconic try in an iconic matchup of nations at rugby. It's just just the perfect cap on. I mean, let's not lose the fact that this was an amazing game. Like I remember watching the greatest game ever at in Sydney between the All Blacks and Australia, and that end to end and late scoring and late changes. There were 4 scoring changes or lead changes in the down the stretch in this game as well. And to me it sits up there with games like that. This is, we can analyse the moments in it, but overall this was just an exceptional game, one that people should go back and watch over and over, especially England fans.
What it will also do is the belief for guys like Jorgensen, who's 20, Suaalii 21. These, you think about Ben Donaldson coming on the sideline conversion. Like a lot of these players are younger than 25. Angus Bell was incredible once again at loosehead prop. He's 23. To have a brotherhood, so to speak, that you can rely on and trust and know that you've been there, you've done it, and you've done it with 80,000 English people there watching on. I think self-belief is possibly the biggest thing that they will get out of it going into next year's Lions series. And
they did it. Yeah, they did it without. Sure, and they did it without any overseas players, which we've been, wondering whether that's what they needed to get over this hump. It's just a year on from the worst World Cup ever, where they were completely demoralised. They've had some big losses already this season. They really, really needed this. It's the best obviously the best performance and the best result in Joe Schmidt's short reign as well. I mean, what do you how do you kind of see this as defining what he's doing? How much of a Schmidt stamp was there on this performance?
Well, a Schmidt stand. Before we get to that, perhaps I think it is the best win that the Wallabies have had since Wales 2015, the World Cup. They've beaten the All Blacks a couple of times along the road. They've beaten them in 2020, but it was a Bledisloe dead rubber. They beat them in 2017. It was a Bledisloe dead rubber. They beat South Africa in 2022 in Adelaide. It was a fine performance, but then they didn't back it up a week later in Sydney. I know that Ian Payton thinks it's up there with their win over the All Blacks in Hong Kong in 2010 when James O'Connor slotted a sideline conversion to win. This is a result which has significance, and it has a bit more of a feel about it. And the reason why I think it's the biggest since that Wales result in the 2015 World Cup, they were down to 13. It was a low scoring game, but it was built off the back of defence and a whole heap of heart, and it spurred them on to the World Cup final. This is the sort of similar result that you can see as stepping stones for something bigger. And when you talk about the fact that it's been done without an overseas player, there was a lot of criticism around no Samu Kerevi, no Will Skelton. You've been talking about them for months. You finally got them, and you've decided to hold them back. To do it with the 23 that you've backed, it's an incredible performance, which does very much go to the heart of Joe Schmidt's coaching and philosophy, which is around cohesion, building combinations, an absolute accuracy at the breakdown, and just knowing your job. And I think they did that today.
I think it changes the narrative too, in that going into the series, a lot of us were thinking, this could be 04. It could be, mention of, we're looking for the first Grand Slam since 1984. And I remember saying to you, you can't write that. Like, this is ridiculous notion that this team could go there and win a Grand Slam coming off, being ranked 9th, 10th in the world against these teams. Now, all of a sudden, and you look at Ireland losing fairly routinely to the All Blacks earlier in the day, yesterday. I'm kind of a bit confused now. It's 6 a.m. and I haven't had enough sleep. But like the All Blacks losing to Ireland, and suddenly it kind of opens up. Christy Doran, is the Grand Slam on?
Is it on? Geez, you wouldn't want to say it now because early crow, wouldn't you? But Wales are going to play Fiji on Sunday Welsh time, Monday morning Australian time against Fiji. They've lost 9 matches in a row. And so the Wallabies, if you think about it, it's set up perfectly for the next week or so. And Scotland after that, you dare to dream. Either way, I think they've got the benefit of another day recovery than Wales do, because clearly they're playing 24 hours earlier. That's going to be important because there'll be a bit of a come down period. There'll be some sore bodies that got pushed right to the edge here. But now they have perhaps an injection from Will Skelton, and maybe he's brought off the bench. Maybe it's a change in a bench configuration. Is it a 6-2? These are points that we'll discuss much more over the coming days until perhaps Monday's pod, which will come out on Tuesday. I reckon that's just about a wrap because you and I both need to get some sleep before a Sunday to enjoy. And I'm sure that there'll be many more people wearing a Wallabies jersey around and across the nation today.
Yeah, thanks, man. The plan was to go to sleep, but at 6:24 local Wollongong time, and having witnessed what I just witnessed, I think I'm still too pumped. I'm also charging on about 3 cups of industrial strength caffeine as well. So, it's one to savour for fans, one to savour for us, because it's always better to write and talk about a team that's as hard as it might be to believe. It's better to write about a team that's actually performing and winning, and that you get enjoyment from doing. But all in all, if you're a Wallabies fan today, the sun's shining on you wherever you are, and Have an awesome day.
42-37 winners, the Wallabies. I'm Christy Doran. Thanks for joining us on the Roar Rugby Podcast, this rapid fire edition. We'll be back early next week with a special guest, and we'll be talking all things. And yep, can the Grand Slam 40 years on, can there be another one written into Australian folklore? Until next time, cheers.